I'll turn these off.
A little bit of that buzz going on in the background again. Same thing as last time.
Hang on, let me check.
Yeah. Whatever you did last time fixed it. But
It still should sound a lot better because my
it's just
input.
kind of a very light buzz. It's just
Let
starting
me
to.
let me do something to fix that. Hang on.
Yeah.
That should sound better now.
That does sound better.
Cool. Thank you. Awesome. Thank you for that. I did not know that. You sound great, by the way. No problems. And I have all the fancy stuff, and only knows how it all works. Cool. Here we go. Hello and welcome to another episode of Keeping It Real, with the largest podcast made by real estate agents and for real estate agents. My name is DJ Paris. I'm your guide and host through the show. Welcome if you're new. Welcome back if you are returning. And today is our series called Learn with a Lender. We are with Christian Bachelder. He is the owner of The One Brokerage. I want everybody to visit this website, the1brokerage.com. He founded this with his partner, David Green. We're going to talk about that in a minute, but we're going to talk about mortgages today or loans or just anything in the news related to lending that agents need to know about. Let me tell you more about Christian. Now, together with David Green, and if you don't know David Green, by the way, he is a huge name in this industry as well. Christian is as huge a name as David, and they are superstars in the lending world and in the investing world as well. And you'll find them all over online. They were big and Bigger Pockets. Some might even say they were the face of Bigger Pockets for many, many, many years. They did their podcast there, and now they're Christian's here helping us. But together with David Green, Christian co-founded The One Brokerage, deemed the fastest growing broker in the nation. 2021 and 2022 ranked in the top 20 brokerages by funded loan volume. Christian is a UC Berkeley grad. He has a bachelor's degree in chemical engineering, but he hated industry and wanted to get out of capped earning potential. Got into real estate with the help of a childhood family friend who had some success in this business and discovered he had a knack for it, connecting with people and adding value to their mindsets, also investments and journeys. He's a licensed real estate agent, insurance agent, and mortgage broker. He regularly hosts masterminds, seminars, and webinars with real estate gurus. He teaches people everything from investing principles and how to buy your 1,000th property with a focus on what markets to target, how to find the best loan, and how to protect one's investments with insurance policies and other forms of asset protection. In short, he is a genius and master of all things related to lending and as well as investing. So you guys need to connect with him. He's a guest speaker, and he has purchased 15 properties in the last 12 months himself. So not only does he talk about lending and using that for investment purposes, he also does it himself. He employs the same principles that he teaches. So he created a course for loan officers as well, if we have any listening, to enroll, to teach the fundamentals of the sales process, how to become the best advisor possible, how to get the most out of that career, and tips on succeeding in any market. If you already have a trusted lender, you need a backup, and Christian is your backup. So I want you to reach out to him, the1brokerage.com. That is number one. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. He's awesome. And by the way, if you haven't invested yourself and haven't bought your first investment property, you need to talk to him as well. That is one of his specialties, and he can not only help you invest, but help teach you how to talk to investors. So you can add that as a stream of income. A lot of agents never learn how to work with investors, and Christian will teach you. He's got every tool at his disposal. Christian, welcome once again.
Absolutely. Appreciate you having me.
Appreciate you being on. All right. So this is what I hear all the time, and I just want to get your perspective because, we hear a lot about rates, and I know rates are not every lender I talk to says don't focus on rates, but of course clients do. And so I don't want to have like a rate debate about when's the best time to buy. But right now we're at a time where a lot of buyers are just like, I don't love the number that I see. And so they sit on the sidelines and then they just, miss any opportunities that are coming in the moment. So agents also often just go, okay, well, I guess you're going to wait for a while. And I think there's probably more information they could provide to tell people what the opportunities are right now. And so just from your perspective as a broker owner and somebody who deals with this all the time, what do you typically say to an agent who's like, hey, my clients are just not happy with rate prices?
Yeah. I mean, the first thing is get multiple quotes for sure. Make sure you have kind of your roll call of lenders, right? Make sure you're getting the right loan product. Make sure you're getting the right advice and guidance in that regard. But obviously, as a buyer, me as a lender, as our listeners as an agent, like you can't change the interest rates. You can't change where the market is, right? But you can respond to it, and you can use strategies and implement different moves in your financing that help you combat it, right? The two main ones that I think are going to be the most useful for agents to understand and have in their tool belt, so to speak, especially in markets like today where you can get properties below list price right now. Those who were buying throughout COVID, you couldn't even get a contingency in your offer, right? They wouldn't give you time for an appraisal. They wouldn't give you time for due diligence. It's buy the house right now for 100K over asking or move on, right?
Often sight unseen.
Often sight unseen. That's exactly right. Or maybe they would host one open house for a couple hours, and you better fit into that 2 hour frame because they're going to have 16 offers, right? And that was a very hard time to buy. It was hard to do your own due diligence. It was hard to get the right numbers. It was, you had to get over the appraised value purchase prices, which means you had to come in with extra money. And sure, your rates were 3%, but your purchase prices were so bloated that I know a lot of people now, even today, that they paid more than the house is worth in 5 years ago, and they still paid more than the house is worth today, which is crazy, right? Who cares what your rate is? You have negative equity, right?
Right.
So every market has something you can complain about, right? I remember people going into COVID, nobody wanted to buy because the world was shutting down and everybody was
Right.
terrified, and the world's ending and nobody's going to live through this pandemic. The people who bought look really smart now. Go back to Y2K. Everybody thought every computer was going to shut down. The people who bought look very smart now. Go back to the 90s. Interest rates were 15, 16, 17% in the 90s. The people who bought look very smart now, right? There's a consistent theme. Even people during 2008, you can make the argument that the absolute worst time to buy ever in American history was 06, 07. A lot of those people who bought intelligently, who were able to hold on to them through the downturn, look pretty smart right now. They have a house with a lot of equity, right? Believe it or not. And let's not even get into the people who bought in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013. They look really smart, right? What I'm getting at is every single market, every response of interest rates or the Fed or whatever's happening has a way to combat it. Okay. Right now, the best thing that you can do is obviously negotiate your purchase price, right? You have more power than you've had in the last probably 7 to 8 years as a realtor to get the best deal possible for your client in terms of the purchase price. However, they're still going to complain about the interest rate, and not complain, but be concerned, I should say, right? And it's fair, right? The interest rates are twice, 3 times as high as they were just 5 years ago. The things that you can do to combat it is really two main things. The first one is a temporary rate buy down. That's, if any of you have heard of a 3-2-1 or a 2-1 buy down. Basically, what that is you get an interest rate of, let's call it 6.5%. Your first year, it's 4.5%. That's what your payment is based off of. The second year, it's 5.5%, and the third year, it's 6.5%. And the whole goal, the point of this program, is to give temporary relief to the interest rates in the interim, while we hope in the next 2 to 3 years they will start to come down, and at that point you'd be able to refinance. If they don't come down, then you reset to the 6.5 that you would have gotten anyways today, and you continue forward with it, right?
Sure.
That's one option. The second option, which I like better, is not as a significant of a decrease, but it's a decrease throughout the life of the loan. And that's for agents requesting seller credits or seller concessions, some people may call it. And basically what that is let's play out a scenario. Let's say you're buying a house for $500,000, and let's say you're going to negotiate instead of just dropping the price, let's say the sellers are a little bit flexible, right? They're motivated. And you want to get the purchase price down to like 485, let's say. You want a 3% decrease in purchase price. I wouldn't do that. I would offer to buy it for $500 and request $15,000 in seller credit. What that seller credit allows me to do as a lender is instead of taking a rate, once again, let's play out a scenario of 6.5, which is about the average that they would get right now as a primary residence buyer. I could probably go get them like a 5.7 or a 5.5 because I can use that 3%, that $15,000 to go buy down their interest rate. And now instead of having a temporary savings, I have a savings throughout the life of the loan. And your floor now is lower, which what I mean by that is when interest rates rise and fall, most people ask when is a good time to take advantage of a refinance, right? So if you're at a 6.5, how low should it go before I refinance? My general guidance is once you get around to 1% savings. So if you're at a 5, you want it to be at a 4. And the reason why I say this strategy drops your floor is instead of being at 6.5, if you're at 5.5, I wouldn't recommend refinancing until you're at 4.5, right? That's when the savings is justified. Now, I don't know if we're going to be at 4.5% rates anytime soon.
Right.
So you're building in a level of protection for yourself there that guarantees your 30-year loan at a lower fixed rate that you still have some flexibility for if it does get lower, but you're locking in something in the fives instead of the 2-1 buy down ballooning back up into the sixes in 2 years, right?
Right.
And what it does is allows. Here's what people don't realize: if you get the house at a lower purchase price, you use all these strategies to buy down the rate. The holding period is not that bad, and then in the future, you negotiate down the purchase price. So if Jerome Powell drops rates by 100 bips, like Trump's pressuring him to do, what do you guys think that's going to do? It's going to flood buyers back into the market. It's going to drive up purchase prices. You're going to have equity because you did a good job at negotiating down your rate. I'm sorry, negotiating down your purchase price, using part of that negotiation to buy down your rate. And in the event we get to a 4.5%, you can still refinance and your house is still worth more money than you bought it for. Whereas the opposite is the problem with everybody you bought during COVID. Yes, you get a great rate, but you're locked in because nobody will leave their homes now.
Yes.
Right. So they're even if their house appreciates. I mean, I just talked to somebody the other day who's a client of mine who has a property that he's had a 2.5% interest rate on.
Oh,
Amazing rate, but it's worth $1 million and he owes 300,000. And he's like, I want to go get that money. How do I get that money? And I'm like, well, you have a 3% rate. Like, sure, we can maybe like put a HELOC, but those are high interest rates. This was on an investment property. We could do a cash out, but then you lose that rate. And he's just like, he can't sell it because he can't go replace that interest rate, right?
right.
And he gets into this like lockdown, and it actually prohibits growth, right? People who are trying to grow and scale and build a portfolio, sometimes those golden handcuffs, they feel like a blessing, but they're actually a curse.
Yep.
Because it leads to you leaving a lot of your money on the table and limiting the reinvestment that real estate is so good at unlocking. So,
Yeah, that's a lot. I'm in a similar situation. Most of us are probably in the country who had a loan 4 years ago. We probably are at under 4%. I'm at 3% myself. And yeah, I don't, I can't rent my place out. Unfortunately, I have restrictions in my HOA. So even though I would love to hold on to that property forever and rent it out, I could try to do it. We'll see. Maybe they'll give me an exception, but probably not. So I'm gonna eat that as well. But at least it's been a good ride for the last 4 years or 5 years. So I'm happy for that. But what I am excited about is even though rates are not ideal, and of course, who wants high rates? Except I sort of do right now because I can afford the place I want at a higher rate, less competition, like you said, and inventory is sitting a little bit longer, so a little bit more opportunity to negotiate, as you said, and I can also buy down if that's if that's something that makes the most sense. So yeah, I mean, part of me wants to just live in that condo forever, and it's probably I could do it for the next 5 or 6 years, but I don't want to, and I don't also want to compete like I had to 5 years ago when the rates were so low. It was tough. I got lucky. I simply got lucky and got a property that didn't really get overbid, and I just kind of got it was new development, so people weren't really as into it at the moment. But I got lucky, and anyway, so yes, you got to live somewhere, and I'm going to be going to a higher rate, and in a weird way, I'm sort of excited about it because I'd rather have less competition, quite honestly. Because you get these runaway runaway offers that just go crazy when the rates go down. And right now, there's so many people sitting on the sideline, and that I think it's a great time to consider. And that's something to talk to your sellers about, or your owners rather, and also talk to the people buying. Um, I want to talk. Let's switch to investments because this is really what I think you know better than anybody I know in this space. And you have so many cool ideas about how agents can build generational wealth. And I know we've talked about in the past. We can always our listeners can always go back to previous episodes to learn about. You have a really cool retirement strategy, which is the first time I've really heard that, where people can, instead of only maxing out their 401k, they now can put money into a property, buy properties every year. And your suggestion is, even if you can, live in each property for a year, moving as much as you can to do that. And then you have this amazing portfolio. You buy a lot of properties. So are there any, when you look for a property, because you buy pretty much all over the country, what are the most people just think locally. So agents they work locally, but they don't always think for investments larger than the local market. How do you think about finding markets all over the country that, you don't live there, but you see opportunity?
Yeah. Myself personally, I invest in short-term rentals. So I kind of have my buy box, and it includes, is there a destination in the area, but just giving people advice for probably more of the normal purchases that people are pursuing. Um, Anytime there is, I mean, we talked about when we first jumped in, an exodus of California, right? A lot of people leave California, but the unique thing about somewhere like here is that the prices don't really go down. No matter how many people leave, enough money stays where there's still too big of a desire for too little property, right?
Yeah.
Wherever has a problem like that, if you have a surplus of listings, I'll give you an example. Right now in Washington, D.C., there's more listings than I think there's been in like the last 10 years because a huge amount of the federal government just got laid off. Where does the federal government
Right.
live and work? They live in Washington, D.C. So if you're a buyer in Washington, D.C. right now, you got some pretty hefty negotiation abilities there, right, to buy a new house. But I'd also be careful because the prices there are likely to continue going down because there's less of a desire to live there, right? The things that I look for are the exact opposite. Where is the desire to live, right? Where when people are leaving places like California, where are they going, right? I think of a few years back, Boise, Idaho had a huge, exodus of Californians. Austin, Texas, but what you have to kind of look at the numbers on is, does it stay and does it keep that desire to live there? Austin has tanked, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a temporary surge in the interest of Californians who moved and realized it wasn't California,
Yes.
right? And Austin was close. It had the hip, culture, and it was unique downtown, but you're not near the ocean, you're not near the mountains, you're not near the forests. The people who left California realized that's what they were leaving. And it's funny, I've
Well,
actually done loans for a lot of people who moved back.
yeah,
Uh,
it's but Austin's interesting because it is certainly a cool place to live, but they have infrastructure problems. They have
exactly.
massive traffic issues. Nashville, same thing. When
Yeah.
1,000 people a day or something were moving to Nashville, it's a really cool city. Charleston's probably got a similar problem. Really cool cities, but of course, there's other issues that come with it that once somebody's there, yeah, it makes it less desirable.
100%, 100%. And not saying Austin's a bad place. All I'm saying is when there's these temporary surges that aren't really based in like long-term data yet, right? Like Austin was a fairly new craze, right? Boise was a fairly new craze where there was this mass amount of, overage in the pocketbooks of people in California, and they left and tried to find like the next California. They did. They found something, and it created an artificial surge during COVID. As we saw, Austin and Boise prices were up like 300% during COVID, right? And now we're withdrawing a little bit more of that. And in the same line of our conversation, no matter what their rate was, it doesn't really matter because now they're not sitting on any equity, right?
Right.
Whereas people moving in now to Austin, sure, it's a higher rate, absolutely, no arguments. but you have an ability to negotiate lower purchase prices. And there's only one thing that stays when you buy a house. Your purchase price doesn't change. Your rate can be refinanced, right? But your purchase price, you lock that in. Okay. And the people who bought when it was crazy locked in a really high purchase price,
Yeah.
right? But just continuing with what you asked with my buy box, I definitely look at things that are driving job growth. So like when a new Amazon warehouse moves in or something like that,
Sure.
right? During the Biden administration, there were a lot of locations that were giving away tech contracts, whether it was chip manufacturing or whatnot. I know a lot of investors who basically like didn't even have to think; they just followed. Those who are familiar may call it the Burger King strategy. I don't know if everybody's familiar with that, but Burger King doesn't actually have any research and development money that goes into where they put their next location. They just follow
Yeah.
McDonald's,
I
right?
know it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's super smart. That's why you see a McDonald's or a Burger King next to almost every McDonald's, because they just say, "Hey, McDonald's is doing all the hard work of knowing where to put the shops. We'll just follow them." Right?
Yep.
It's the same thing that I know a lot of investors do. If the government is handing out contracts to build chipsets and they're creating 10,000 jobs in a small community in the Midwest, like you don't have to put a whole lot of research into it. Just go buy there. There's going to be 10,000 new people there that need houses, right? Like
Right.
that's not rocket science. Whether you're buying as an investor who's going to get rental income from that rental income is going to be driven up because there's a lot of desire, or you're a seller, right, who wants the equity of your property to be driven up because there's a desire to buy, right? Um, Anything that is bringing 10,000 new people to an area is it's a very common sense approach of what that's going to have as an impact, right? So I mean, really, and obviously it's hard to stay on the cutting edge of where everything new is happening. But if you're researching markets, there's a lot of data that you can pull online of job growth and is there an exit or a driving in of people, population, and opportunity. Um, and it's see new construction. Is there enough builders don't like building when there's not a desire to buy, right?
Yeah.
Um, but if you're able to follow those metrics and kind of develop a buying plan, um, those are kind of the fundamentals that will drive long-term success for sure.
So I have two areas I want to ask your opinion about, and if you're not super knowledgeable about these particular communities, like no big deal. But I have two that are interesting to me. So there's Tampa, Florida. Now Tampa is not really a destination. It's not a vacation destination. Well, I mean maybe it is a little bit. St. Pete's and Clearwater, I
Yeah.
guess. But outside of those beachy areas and the fun kind of areas, Tampa proper is probably not a place that people. I mean, I guess short term could work. But certainly that's going to be more long term rentals, 12-month, typical lease rentals. So their market is tanked. Home prices have tanked, in the last year or two. So when you see a market like that, if you're looking more long-term rentals, do you see opportunity at a place like Tampa where I don't know how much growth is happening with industry and with population, but it's certainly a desirable place to live. It's more inexpensive than other parts of Florida, and it's probably not going anywhere. But what do you think of a place like Tampa?
Tampa's interesting. I think Tampa would not be going down at all if not for the insurance
Yeah,
problems.
that's right.
Florida in general, I should say coastal Florida. Inland Florida does not have this problem. But I own just south of Tampa. I own in Bradenton. Um,
My parents, funny enough, that's where my parents, they're renting this year in Bradenton
yeah,
over the winter, and they're checking to see if they want to live there full time. So,
yeah. So I love Bradenton. That's one of my favorite houses I own in my entire portfolio. Um, Incredible spot. Um, Crazy sand beaches and all these really it's an awesome little community. It's got a cute downtown. But this even extends up to Tampa, down into Sarasota, Naples, Venice, all these places, right? They're unique in that they look like paradise, right? They have these amazing beaches, these amazing desires for people to be there. It's brutal in the summer.
brutal.
It's 105 degrees with 80% humidity. It's brutal.
Right.
Um, However, there's a lot of things that drive people to Florida and a lot of things that drive them out once they get there, right? So Florida is kind of the great equalizer, in my opinion. Florida is kind of like an indicator, in my mind. When Florida real estate is going up, usually the economy's doing well. When it's going down, usually it's turning. And Florida kind of leads the way. And it's where people want to go when things are going well. And a lot of times people want to get out of there when they're not. It's really funny.
It's a
Florida is
good
like
point.
this economic indicator a little bit. However, regardless of economics or directions of the economy, Florida lately has obviously been crushed with a number of hurricanes. Um, that scares a lot of people out of the market. They've had a lot of problems with their HOAs,
Yep.
right? They had the building that collapsed on the unstable foundation. They've had a lot of HOAs that need roof repairs that can't afford them, and then your homeowner's fee goes through the roof. But taking the condos out, because the Florida condo market has tanked, absolutely. The Florida single family market has been hit in a number of residential areas, Fort Lauderdale, um, Hollywood, a couple different places on that side. But really, the biggest indicator, I should say, the biggest impactor for Florida real estate and Florida owners has to be insurance.
Yeah,
I mean, I
for
know
sure.
on my property when I bought my Bradenton property, it was my insurance was $2,800 a month, $2,800 a year. I'm sorry, so a little over $200 a month, very reasonable. My last invoice just came in and it's 12,000.
Oof.
So you think now I'm an investor, I Airbnb that property, so I'm able to eat an expense increase like that. But you think about that if that's like a somebody on a stable income, retiree on a fixed income. I'm sorry, somebody who can't afford a $10,000 a year increase. What do? You can go shop around and maybe you get it down to 11,000 a year, but like there's still not a solution to that,
Right.
right? So they sell, and when that happens in mass, prices get driven down. And now the new buyers come in to make offers, and they see the insurance quotes. They say, "I don't want to pay that, so I'm going to negotiate, $100,000 off of your property because there's a $10,000 a year expense I wasn't estimating." And that's their right to do that. And then you get the problem of what's happening in Florida. The same thing can happen. I see it in some markets where property taxes are going up. Same thing. When those property tax bills hit, ouch.
Yeah.
And sometimes, and that all of these drive investor and buyer desire.
Yeah.
And they care about what their monthly payment is. They're already eating a high interest rate on their mortgage. If you stack on a high insurance payment on top of that, it's tough to make the numbers work, right? Um, and that's not even their desire. They may not qualify for the loan, right? Somebody may
Right.
be pre-approved for 500,000 in Orlando, right, which is middle Florida, and going out to Fort Lauderdale, they may find a $500,000 house and they're not qualified because the insurance is so much higher. They literally can't get the mortgage. So it's not always just their desire. They may love the house and may want to buy it. They just can't, right?
What do you think about Salt Lake City? So I recently visited there, visiting a friend. I'd never been there before, and boy, that is a cool place
Yeah.
to live. And certainly, it's a destination that people, again, not so much. Well, they do vacation there, of course, for skiing, but outside of that, I see that as a, I don't know. It seems like there's a lot of opportunity there, certainly short term, but curious on what you think about Salt Lake.
Yeah, I've gotten obviously their short term rentals are very seasonal, right? A lot of people go during the winter, the skiing, the snowboarding, the slopes, right? Um, in terms of investors that I see, I don't see a whole lot of movement in Salt Lake. I see a number of people. I think there's a lot of primary residence buyers there. People who want to live there as the kind of awesome city that it is. I've been there as well. It's a cool spot. Um, a lot of growth there in terms of the kind of metropolitan area. Um, I just did a loan on a commercial multifamily. It was a 12 unit property that got converted from old industrial warehouses,
Oh, that's cool.
and they converted this big old beat up ugly building into 12 like really pristine like beautiful luxury apartments now, townhomes I guess you call them. They're 2 story, um, and the building looks so cool. It's like all hip and cool colors and everything looks, something that you would expect in like a, trendy downtown location, right? So I mean, you see things like that. I think there's definitely opportunity there. I don't want to pretend to be an expert in Salt Lake City, but definitely a place that I could see a driving desire of investors for long-term rentals. Maybe you get a little bit of short-term rental stuff for the skiing. It's just very seasonal, and especially as long as there's jobs to support the population, the primary residence buyer. Absolutely.
Awesome. Well, thanks for those. And again, I didn't mean to put you on the spot with those particular areas, but I just want to put in people's mind this idea that investing can be done, of course, anywhere, and to expand your horizon beyond your local, your local streets and communities. And also, too, this is a great opportunity, especially now, to add to your tool belt this ability to work with investors, whether you're investing yourself, which you should be, and if, because again, that's the best way to get additional clients is say, I do this as well, but to also just add that in so that when you do find those investors, you don't have to pass it over to another agent. And so, Christian and his team are really just experts at this, in addition to traditional, single primary residence mortgages as well. But I want everybody to go. You need a backup broker. Christian and David are amazing. So go to the1brokerage.com. That's number one, the1brokerage.com. Get a quote. Get it on your next buy side deal. Let Christian and his team take a look, see if they can help. Also, ask him about investment opportunities. Talk to him about strategies that you could employ or bring to your investors right now, because, of course, there's always opportunity, and Christian would love to work with you, and his team will work with you directly. So, the1brokerage.com is where you go for all things lending. We'll have a link to that in the show notes. You can also follow Christian on Instagram. We'll have a link to his Instagram. He has over 300,000 followers. He's kind of a big deal. So we are excited to continue to support Christian, and he supports us. So, guys, thank you, Christian, for another great episode. We're going to see you again in a month. And for everyone out there, talk to your clients. Listen to this episode again. Christian had some great talking points about what to tell clients who are sitting on the sidelines. There's an opportunity here. As Christian said, there's always opportunity. It just depends on, how your mindset, and of course, having a good response ready to go. So listen to this, and also tell a friend. Shoot this podcast over to another agent that you feel could benefit from this podcast episode. Christian is amazing. So shoot this over to them. We'd appreciate that. Also support our sponsors, and we will see everybody on the next episode. Also, one last thing, please leave us a review. Let us know what you think of the show, and we appreciate that, and always are improving our show based on what your needs are. So, Christian, thank you once again. The1brokerage.com. We will see you next time. Thanks, Christian.